Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, where we bring you the latest insights, trends, and discussions from the dairy industry. I'm your host, Bella, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Douglas.
Thanks, Bella. It's great to be here today discussing a topic that's not only timely, but essential for our industry's future. As today is International Women's Day 2025, we're taking a deep dive into the changing role of women in dairy.
That's right, Douglas. Today's episode, Breaking the Barn Ceiling, Women's Revolution in Dairy, explores how women are shattering glass ceilings across our industry while examining the persistent challenges they face. We'll be unpacking the latest data from the IDFA's 2025 State of Women in Dairy report and hearing about the experiences that are reshaping dairy's future.
We've got a lot to cover today, from leadership trends and technological innovations to the economic case for gender diversity and the programs driving change. So let's dive right in.
Douglas, when we look at dairy farms across America, there's a transformation happening that many of our listeners might not fully appreciate. Women haven't just entered the dairy industry. They're actively reshaping it from milking parlors to boardrooms.
That's absolutely right, Bella. And what's fascinating is that the International Dairy Foods Association's latest report gives us concrete numbers to understand this shift. Their 2025 survey of 608 industry professionals found that 54% of women are actively asking for promotions compared to 47% of men.
And what's even more remarkable is that when women ask for those promotions, 62% of them are successful. Exactly the same success rate as their male counterparts. This really challenges the old narrative that women aren't as ambitious or capable in traditional agricultural settings.
I think what those numbers show us is that when given the opportunity, women are demonstrating equal capability. But there's still a disconnect, isn't there? The same report found that nearly half of women, 48%, still believe they have fewer advancement opportunities than men in the industry.
That gap between demonstrated success and perceived opportunity really highlights the work still ahead. What we're seeing is progress, certainly, but not yet equality.
I'm curious, Bella, in your travels visiting dairy operations across the country, have you noticed this shift in women's roles firsthand?
Absolutely, Douglas. Just last month, I visited a 1,200 cow dairy in Wisconsin, where the herd manager, nutrition specialist, and calf program leader were all women. What struck me wasn't just their presence, but how they were implementing innovative approaches that were measurably improving herd health and milk quality. The farm owner specifically mentioned that his operation had become more efficient since these women took on leadership roles.
That mirrors what we're seeing in the data. It's not just about representation. It's about the unique perspective and skills women bring to dairy operations. Let's dig deeper into the historical context of women in dairy and how we got to where we are today. The perception of dairy farming as exclusively male territory has persisted for generations, despite the fact that women have always been present throughout agricultural history. What's different now isn't that women are newly arriving in dairy. It's that their long-standing contributions are finally receiving acknowledgement.
That's so true, Douglas. Historically, women were often the ones handling the actual milking on family farms, managing calf raising, keeping the records, and handling finances, all critical components of successful operations. But they were rarely featured in agricultural publications or recognized as the real farmers.
If we look back just a few decades, women's involvement in dairy was often categorized as helping out rather than recognized as essential labor or expertise. Mary Creek, a third-generation dairy farmer from Hagerstown, Maryland, shared her experience growing up when it was not common to have a woman as involved in showing cattle as she was. Now 62 years old, she farms 300 acres with her brother and recalls, "Our parents raised us to do what was necessary, and I used to be able to keep up with just about any man with my chore accomplishments."
That historical dismissal of women's contributions has had lasting effects. Today's women in dairy are not just overcoming current obstacles, they're pushing against decades of institutional and cultural barriers that marginalize their predecessors' contributions.
According to the IDFA's 2025 survey, 63% of women express satisfaction with their opportunities for career advancement. Furthermore, half of female respondents acknowledge having access to programs designed to foster career growth and retention. These numbers tell us women aren't merely surviving in dairy, they're increasingly finding pathways to thrive.
But here's what I find particularly interesting and concerning. If women are increasingly taking charge of their careers and succeeding, why do nearly half, 48%, still believe they have fewer advancement opportunities than their male counterparts?
That disconnect between progress and perception gets at something deeper, doesn't it? It suggests that despite statistical improvements, there are still deeply entrenched cultural assumptions about gender roles in agricultural sectors, including dairy.
Yieldable. I've spoken with several women in dairy who describe what they call the prove it again factor. This feeling that they have to continuously demonstrate their competence in ways their male colleagues simply don't. One woman who manages a 500-cow operation told me she's still occasionally mistaken for the farmer's wife when equipment suppliers visit the farm, despite the fact that she's actually the owner and primary operator.
That persistent underestimation has real costs for our industry. If qualified, capable women are constantly having to overcome these extra hurdles, how much innovation and leadership potential are we losing in the process?
Speaking of leadership, let's look at some of the remarkable women who are breaking through those barriers and reshaping what leadership looks like in dairy today. The rise of women to leadership positions represents one of the most significant disruptions to traditional dairy industry power structures in decades. The IDFA's research confirms this trajectory. More than half of women reported asking for promotions compared to 47% of men, with 62% of those women saying they received those promotions, a rate equal to men.
And behind those statistics are real women making remarkable contributions. Becky Rasdal Vargas, Senior Vice President at IDFA and leader of the Women in Dairy Initiative, has been at the forefront of measuring and addressing gender equality in the industry. The survey she helped develop, conducted between October 16 and November 7, 2024, provides the most comprehensive picture to date of women's experiences across the dairy sector.
Yielings. We're seeing remarkable women emerge as industry leaders across various segments of dairy. From processing to research to farm operations, women are bringing fresh perspectives that drive innovation. Jackie Klippenstein's work as Senior Vice President at Dairy Farmers of America exemplifies this trend. Recently awarded the prestigious 2024 Leading Impact Award by the Dairy Girl Network, Klippenstein has been a transformative influence throughout the sector.
What's particularly noteworthy about Klippenstein's journey is how she's broken barriers in policy development. She became the first female board member at the National Milk Producers Federation and now chairs Nutrient, where she's working to reduce the environmental footprint of U.S. dairy operations. Her work demonstrates how women leaders are tackling some of dairy's most pressing challenges, from sustainability to global market positioning.
What makes Rasdal Vargas's work so important is that it's giving us data-driven insights rather than anecdotal evidence. The IDFA survey included 519 women and 89 men, providing a robust sample to understand gender dynamics across various roles and career stages.
And what's particularly interesting is how that leadership pipeline is developing. The report shows that dairy companies are increasingly making investments to support women, yet disparities continue to impact job satisfaction and retention, particularly for women in frontline roles.
That gap between institutional commitments and on-the-ground experiences raises a provocative question. What transformative innovations are we missing when barriers still prevent qualified women from reaching their full potential?
It reminds me of a conversation I had with a dairy cooperative board member last year. She mentioned that until they added 2 women to their previously all-male board, they'd never seriously discussed developing specialty products targeting female consumers, despite women making approximately 80% of household food purchasing decisions.
That brings up an important point about the impact of diverse perspectives on innovation and market responsiveness. But before we get to the business case for women's leadership, let's talk about another factor that's changing the game: technology.
Perhaps nowhere is the gender landscape shifting more dramatically than in technologically advanced dairy operations. Automation is rendering physical strength increasingly irrelevant and creating unprecedented opportunities for women producers.
Inelis. From robotic milking systems to automated feeding technology and data-driven herd management software, these innovations are transforming what it means to run a modern dairy farm. And importantly, they're making the physical demands that once created barriers for some women increasingly obsolete.
What's most revolutionary about this technological shift is how it's rendering outdated gender assumptions obsolete. When farms run on brain power rather than just physical labor, women's capabilities in problem-solving, animal health management, and operational efficiency emerge as competitive advantages.
I visited a dairy in Pennsylvania last month that's using robotic milking systems and wearable cow monitoring technology. The herd manager, a woman in her 30s, told me that these technological advances have completely changed her role. Instead of focusing on the physical aspects of moving cows and managing milking systems, she's now analyzing data patterns to optimize herd health and production. Her background in biology and statistics, combined with her understanding of cow behavior, makes her exceptionally qualified for this new dairy landscape.
As highlighted at the IDFA Annual Dairy Forum in San Antonio this January, even in a world of artificial intelligence and automation, business success requires a group of diverse and capable people. That diversity of thought and approach is becoming increasingly recognized as a competitive advantage.
The International Dairy Foods Association has focused its efforts on 6 key areas impacting gender equality: treatment, compensation, mentorship and support, opportunities for advancement, factors in recruiting and retention, and discrimination policies and gender equality goals. This holistic approach recognizes that technological advancement must be paired with cultural evolution to create truly inclusive workplaces.
It's worth noting that this technological revolution in dairy isn't just an American phenomenon. Across Canada, Europe, and increasingly in developing dairy regions, automation is creating new opportunities for women. In Canada, for instance, women like Alicia, who studied veterinary health technology before joining her husband's dairy operation, are finding that technology has drastically reduced the manual labor once required and enabled them to take on expanded roles in farm management.
That recognition of inclusion as a business imperative brings us to an important question. Beyond fairness and equity, what's the economic case for advancing women's leadership in dairy?
The business case for women's leadership in dairy extends far beyond equity. It's about profitability and sustainability in an increasingly competitive global market. While historical barriers have limited women's advancement, new data reveals how gender diversity drives financial performance and innovation throughout the dairy supply chain.
The IDFA's 2025 State of Women in Dairy report offers some compelling evidence here. Let me share some key statistics that really highlight both progress and persistent challenges.
Let's break down these numbers in detail. 54% of women asked for promotions compared to 47% of men. When they asked, 62% of women received those promotions, exactly the same success rate as men. However, 55% of women believe their gender negatively impacts their pay, compared to only 5% of men. That 50-point gap in perception is staggering. And nearly half of women, 48%, believe they have fewer advancement opportunities than their male counterparts.
These numbers reveal a striking disconnect between demonstrated capability and perceived opportunity. When women ask for promotions, they're just as successful as men, proving their competence and readiness for advancement. Yet, a majority still believe their gender negatively affects their compensation.
And this isn't just about fairness. It represents a strategic vulnerability for an industry that cannot afford to undervalue talent in an increasingly competitive global marketplace. If more than half of women feel their contributions aren't being fairly compensated, how long will they stay in dairy when other agricultural and food sectors are actively recruiting diverse talent?
These findings align with broader research from previous years, which confirm that women in the dairy industry report feeling overlooked, undervalued, and underpaid. The persistence of these challenges, despite growing awareness, suggests that systemic change requires more than surface-level commitments to diversity and inclusion.
I've spoken with several dairy operation owners who've told me that their most significant innovations in recent years, whether in sustainability practices, product development, or operational efficiency, came from women in their organizations. One processor mentioned that their female quality assurance manager identified a process improvement that reduced product loss by 8%, translating to hundreds of thousands of dollars annually.
These examples highlight why supporting women's advancement isn't just the right thing to do. It's a business imperative. And that brings us to the networks and programs that are accelerating women's success in dairy. Douglas, would you take us through some of those initiatives?
The growth of dedicated networks supporting women in dairy has dramatically accelerated progress toward gender equality in the industry. The International Dairy Foods Association's Women in Dairy Network stands as a prominent example, working to improve gender equality within the U.S. dairy sector.
Becky Rasdal Vargas, IDFA Senior Vice President of Trade and Workforce Policy, leads these efforts, which include mentoring circles, professional development webinars, and networking events. This comprehensive approach recognizes that advancing women in dairy requires both individual development and systemic change.
The IDFA Women in Dairy mentoring circles are particularly valuable. They connect participants with a supportive network of peers to exchange knowledge, share insights, and advance their professional development. These structured relationships help women navigate challenges specific to the dairy industry while building the connections that often lead to advancement opportunities.
For any listeners interested in these mentoring circles, it's worth noting that IDFA will open applications for its next cohort in June 2025. These programs are designed to support women at various career stages, from emerging leaders to those advancing to executive roles.
What makes these networks truly revolutionary is their systemic approach. Rather than focusing solely on helping individual women navigate existing structures, they're gathering data, creating benchmarks, and holding the industry accountable for measurable progress.
This strategic approach transforms what could be dismissed as women's issues into industry-wide imperatives for competitiveness and growth. By showing the business impact of gender diversity, these initiatives are changing how industry leaders think about talent development and retention.
And we're seeing similar initiatives at regional levels as well. Dairy associations in states like Wisconsin, New York, and California have developed women's leadership programs that combine skills development with networking opportunities. These local connections often prove especially valuable for women working in more isolated rural communities.
Beyond the United States, we're seeing similar networks emerge globally. Australia's legendary Women's Network and Canada's mentorship programs for women in agriculture demonstrate that this isn't just an American phenomenon. These international initiatives suggest that the advancement of women in dairy is increasingly recognized as a global priority for industry sustainability and innovation.
Despite these important initiatives, significant challenges remain for women in dairy. Let's examine what the data tells us about the persistent roadblocks to full gender equality in our industry. Despite remarkable progress, women in dairy continue facing systemic barriers that limit both individual advancement and industry innovation. The 2025 IDFA survey reveals that nearly half of women, 48%, believe they have fewer advancement opportunities than their male counterparts, and 55% of women reported that their gender negatively influences their compensation.
Let's take a closer look at the generational and workplace divides revealed in the IDFA report. For Gen Z and millennial women, 41% believe gender will make career advancement harder, This is particularly concerning because these younger women represent the future of our industry.
The report also reveals that 29% of female frontline employees have left jobs due to a lack of opportunities. For frontline workers in processing plants and on farms, the challenges can be especially acute, from lack of facilities to inflexible schedules that create particular hardships for women with caregiving responsibilities.
And the gender pay gap remains a significant hurdle that has shown little improvement. The 2025 data confirms this remains a pressing issue, with 55% of women reporting that their gender negatively influences their compensation, compared to only 5% of men.
That stark contrast in perception, 55% versus 5%, underscores how differently men and women experience the same workplace environments. When we have such divergent views of workplace fairness, it becomes difficult to build truly collaborative teams.
What makes these persistent challenges particularly frustrating is that they contradict the industry's own data about women's capabilities and ambitions. When women consistently demonstrate leadership potential, as evidenced by 62% of those who ask for promotions successfully earning them, equal to their male counterparts, yet continue to face systematic barriers to advancement, the industry loses access to critical talent at precisely the moment when innovation and fresh perspectives are most needed.
I recently spoke with a woman who left a mid-sized dairy processor after 8 years because despite consistently strong performance reviews, she saw male colleagues with similar or lesser qualifications being promoted ahead of her. She's now working in food manufacturing outside the dairy sector, taking her expertise and institutional knowledge with her. Her story isn't unique, and these departures represent a significant loss of talent for our industry.
Healing. Looking toward the future, what do these trends tell us about where the dairy industry is headed? Let's explore dairy's female-powered future and what it means for all stakeholders. As we look toward the remainder of 2025 and beyond, the implications of women's increasing leadership in dairy will fundamentally reshape the industry's trajectory. Having broken through initial barriers to participation and recognition, women are now positioned to drive transformative change in areas ranging from sustainability practices to consumer engagement and technological innovation.
The IDFA's comprehensive research provides a roadmap for continued progress. The fact that 54% of women are now actively asking for promotions compared to 47% of men, with 62% of those women successfully earning the promotion, indicates a growing confidence and assertiveness among women in the industry.
However, the persistence of the gender pay gap and the fact that nearly half, 48%, of women still believe they have fewer advancement opportunities than their male counterparts indicates that significant work remains. This isn't a challenge that will resolve itself without continued focus and action.
As IDFA continues its work through the Women in Dairy initiative, their approach of using data-based metrics and tools, C-suite engagement, and fostering networking and professional and leadership development offers a promising framework for continued progress.
The IDFA Women in Dairy Network will open applications for its next mentoring circles in June 2025, providing another opportunity for women across the industry to connect with peers and mentors who can support their professional development. For listeners interested in participating, we'll include a link in our show notes.
The findings presented at the Dairy Forum 2025 in San Antonio this January made clear that creating a people-first culture is essential for a strong dairy future. As the industry continues to navigate challenges from automation to market pressures, leveraging the full talent pool, regardless of gender, will be crucial for maintaining competitive advantage.
Based on current trends, we can expect to see women increasingly shaping industry priorities over the next decade. Areas like sustainability, animal welfare, consumer transparency, and workforce development, where women already demonstrate strong leadership, will likely become even more central to dairy's success. The question isn't whether women will influence these areas, but how quickly the industry will remove remaining barriers to their full participation.
Bella, we've covered a lot of ground today. from historical barriers to future opportunities. Let's wrap up with some key takeaways and final thoughts.
As we've discussed throughout today's episode, the dairy industry stands at a pivotal juncture, one where women's increasing influence, leadership, and innovation are fundamentally reshaping its trajectory. The statistics from the IDFA's comprehensive 2025 research paint a clear picture. 54% of women are actively asking for promotions compared to 47% of men, with 62% successfully earning them. Yet 48% still believe they have fewer advancement opportunities than their male counterparts. And a concerning 55% report that their gender negatively influences their compensation compared to only 5% of men.
These numbers tell a story of both remarkable progress and persistent challenges, a reflection of an industry in transformation rather than one that has completed its journey toward gender equality. The IDFA's 2025 State of Women in Dairy report, based on a survey of 608 industry professionals conducted between October 16th and November 7th, 2024, provides the most comprehensive picture to date of both advancements made and barriers that remain.
We'd like to challenge our listeners to take specific actions based on today's discussion. For dairy farm owners and managers, take a hard look at your hiring, promotion, and compensation practices. Are you fully leveraging female talent? For agricultural educators, are you actively encouraging young women to consider dairy careers and providing them with role models and mentors? For industry associations, are you collecting and publishing data on gender representation in your leadership? And for everyone in dairy, are you speaking up when you see barriers to women's full participation?
The dairy industry faces unprecedented challenges, from climate concerns to changing consumer preferences to technological disruption. We simply cannot afford to underutilize half of our potential talent pool. The operations and organizations that thrive in the coming decades will be those that fully leverage diverse perspectives, experiences, and leadership styles.
As today is International Women's Day 2025, we encourage all our listeners to recognize that women's advancement in dairy isn't merely a matter of equity, it's an economic and strategic imperative. The question is no longer whether women can lead in dairy, but how quickly the industry will transform to fully leverage the talent, perspective, and innovation that women have always brought to agriculture.
The glass milking parlor is cracking, if not yet fully shattered. The dairy industry must not only acknowledge its gender disparities, but actively work to address them, both through individual actions and systemic change. The future of our industry depends on it.
Thank you for joining us for this important conversation. We'd love to hear your thoughts, experiences, and questions about women's roles in dairy. You can reach us through our website at thebullvine.com or on our social media channels. Until next time, I'm Bella.
And I'm Douglas. Thanks for listening to the Bullvine Podcast, where we're passionate about the future of dairy.